Okay, everybody say hi. Okay. You want to say hi, Savannah?
No.
Say
Hi, this is Dylan.
Move your legs so I can get by, please. Okay, here we go. How does it look? Is it centered on my face? Is it a good way to read?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Just can't show Ellie.
Well, I'm not trying to show Ellie. I'm
Yeah.
trying to show Grandpa reading the book. And you kids are supposed to be invisible. You know what invisible means?
Yeah, I see each other.
That means you can't see, right? So Ellie is invisible, isn't she?
Yep.
All right, Savannah, are you ready to read a long story? Shall we count the numbers? Because it's going to be, this is going to be The Magician's Nephew, chapter 14, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages plus a little teeny bit. It's pretty short. Okay, so can
Only
we?
5?
5, yeah, and a little, so it's really short, shorter than usual. Dylan, would you please sit down? So you're not distracting your brothers and sisters and cousins, etc., etc. And you play with your toes, they'll be stinking in my nose. That rhymes, doesn't it? Doesn't that rhyme? Isn't that a poem? If you play with your toes, they will stink in my nose.
No.
Yeah, that's a rhyme, though.
They'll in our nose.
Okay, sit down, Dylan. If I have to take that pillow away from you, you will be in trouble, okay? Like so much trouble, you might not get your raisin. You don't want your raisin?
I got in most trouble.
Yeah, but you want your raisin, don't you?
I guess.
How about, why don't you just be
Where's
good?
our mom?
Why don't you just be good because you want to be good, right?
I'm paralyzed.
All right, here we go. Everybody quiet. 1, 2, 3, go. Well done, said Aslan in a voice that made the earth shake. Why is he saying well done?
Because he finished.
Because who finished?
Where's Mom?
Wait, no.
Did
Diggory.
somebody go on the horse?
Diggory.
The flying horse? Diggory went on the flying horse to get what? An apple. Right, he went on the flying horse to get an apple, right?
But
Okay, so
where's her
Aslan
mom?
says she's picking plums. So, we gotta read or we'll never get done.
After you're done, we're gonna have chocolate raisin, then we go pick plums.
You can, right, but you gotta get done first, right?
Yeah.
So that means we gotta be quiet, right? Okay, let's do it. Let's be quiet.
Yeah.
And let's do it. So Aslan says, well done. Then Diggory knew that all the Narnians had heard those words and that the story of them would be handed down from father to son in that new world for hundreds of years and perhaps forever. But he was in no danger of feeling conceited, for he didn't think about it at all now that he was face to face with Aslan. The time he found he could look straight into the lion's eyes, he had forgotten his troubles and felt confident. Well done, son, said Adam. Well done, son of Adam, said the lion again. For this fruit you have hungered and thirsted and wept. No hand but yours shall sow the seed of the tree that is to be the protection of Narnia. Throw the apple towards the riverbank where the ground is soft. Diggory did as he was told. Everyone had grown so quiet that you could hear the soft thump where it fell into the mud. It is well thrown, said Aslan. Let us now proceed to the coronation of King Frank of Narnia and Helen his queen. The children now noticed these two for the first time. They were dressed in strange and beautiful clothes. From their shoulders rich robes flowed out behind them to where 4 dwarfs held up the king's train and 4 river nymphs, the queens. Their heads were bare, but Helen had let her hair down and it made for a great improvement in her appearance. But it was neither hair nor clothes that made them look so different from their old selves. Their faces had a new expression, especially the king's. All the sharpness and cunning and quarrelsomeness which he had picked up as a London cabby seemed to have been washed away, and the courage and kindness which he had always were his were easier to see. Perhaps it was the air of the young world that had done it, or talking with Aslan, or both. Upon my word, whispered Fledge to Polly, my old master's been changed nearly as much as I have. Why, he's a real master now. Yes, but don't buzz in my ear like that, said Polly. It tickles me so much. Now, said Aslan, some of you undo that tangle you have made with those trees and let us see what we shall find there. Diggory now saw that where 4 trees grew close together, their branches had all been laced together or tied together with switches so as to make a sort of a cage. The 2 elephants with their trunks and a few dwarfs with their little axes soon got it all undone. There were 3 things inside. One was a young tree that had seemed to be made out of gold. That's pretty cool. The second was a young tree that seemed to be made out of silver. That's pretty cool. But the third was a miserable object in muddy clothes sitting hunched up between them. Gosh, said Diggory, Uncle Andrew. Now, do you remember Uncle Andrew, anybody?
Got planted.
He got planted, right? But of course he didn't grow, did he? So what do you think happened if you plant somebody upside down? What happens
No,
to
he
the
didn't.
what happens to the money in their pockets?
It falls out.
And then it does what? It grows little trees of gold and silver, right?
Yeah,
And that's
but
pretty
not.
cool.
But remember, I think the elephant turned him right side up.
I think the elephant did turn him right side up.
Because
Okay. Gosh, said it, Diggory, Uncle Andrew. To explain all this, we must go back a bit. The beast, you remember, had tried planting and watering him. And when the watering brought him to his senses, he found himself soaking wet, buried up to his thighs in earth, which was quickly turning into mud, and surrounded by more wild animals than he had ever dreamed of in his life before. It is perhaps not surprising that he began to scream and howl. This was, in a way, a good thing, for it had last persuaded everyone, even the warthog, that he was alive. So they dug him up again. His trousers were in really shocking state by now. As soon as his legs were free, he tried to bolt, but one swift curl of the elephant's trunk around his waist soon put an end to that. Everyone now thought he must be safely kept somewhere till Aslan had time to come and see him and say what should be done about him. So they made a sort of a cage or a coop all around him, and then they offered him everything that they could think of to eat. The donkey collected great piles of thistles and threw them in, but Uncle Andrew didn't seem to care about them. The squirrels bombarded him with a volley of nuts, but he only covered his head with his hands and tried to keep out of the way. Several birds flew in and to and fro, and diligently dropping worms on him. The bear was especially kind. During the afternoon he found a wild bee's nest, and instead of eating it himself, which he would have very much liked to have done, this worthy creature brought it back to Uncle Andrew. But this was in fact the worst failure of all. The bear lobbed the whole sticky mess right over the top of the enclosure, and unfortunately it hit Uncle Andrew slap in the face. Not all the bees were dead. The bear, who would not at all have minded being hit in the face by a honeycomb himself, could not understand why Uncle Andrew staggered back, slipped, sat down, and it was sheer bad luck that he sat down on the pile of thistles. And anyway, as the warthog said, quite a lot of honey had got into the creature's mouth, and that was bound to have done it some good. They were really getting quite fond of their strange pet, and hoped that Aslan would allow them to keep it. The cleverer ones were quite sure by now that at least some of the noises which came out of his mouth had a meaning. They christened him Brandy because he made that noise so often. Do you know what brandy is, you guys? Brandy is a kind of alcoholic drink.
Yeah, I think I know what someone's gonna bring next.
All right. Now, in the end, however, they had to leave him there for that night. Aslan was busy all that day instructing the new king and queen and doing other important things, and could not attend to poor old Brandy. What with the nuts, the pears, the apples, the bananas that had been thrown on him, he did fairly well for supper, but it wouldn't be true to say that he passed an agreeable night. Bring out that creature, said Aslan. One of the elephants lifted Uncle Andrew in its trunk and laid him at the lion's feet. He was too frightened to move. Bring out that creature, huh? Well, please, Aslan, said Polly, could you say something to unfrighten him? And then could you say something to prevent him from ever coming back here again? Do you think he wants to? Said Aslan. Well, Aslan, said Polly, he might send someone else. He's so excited about the bar of the lamppost growing into a lamppost tree, and he thinks great folly, child, said Aslan. This world is bursting with life for these few days because the song which I sang it to life still hangs in the air and rumbles in the ground. It will not be for long, though, but I cannot tell you that this old sinner, and I cannot comfort him either. He has made himself unable to hear my voice. If I spoke to him, he would hear only growlings and roarings. O Adam's sons, how cleverly you defend yourselves against all that might do you good. But I will give him the only gift he is still able to receive. He bowed his great head rather sadly and breathed into the magician's terrified face. Sleep, he said, sleep or be separated for some few hours from all the torments you have devised for yourself. Uncle Andrew immediately rolled over with closed eyes and began to breathe peacefully. Well, carry him aside and lay him down, said Aslan. Now, dwarfs, show your smithcraft. Let me see you make 2 crowns for your king and queen. The dwarfs, more dwarfs than you could dream of, rushed forward to the golden tree. They had all of its leaves stripped off and some of its branches torn off too, before you could say Jack Robinson. And now the children could see that it did not merely look gold, but it was real soft gold. It had, of course, sprung up from the half sovereigns, which are a kind of gold coin, that had fallen out of Uncle Andrew's pocket when he was turned upside down, just as the silver tree had grown from the half crowns. From nowhere, as it seemed, piles of dry brushwood for fuel, a little anvil, hammers, tongs, and bellows were produced. And the next moment, how those dwarves loved their work. The fire was blazing, the bellows were roaring, and the gold was melting. The hammers were clinking. 2 moles, whom Aslan had set to dig, which was what they liked best earlier that day, poured out a pile of precious stones at the dwarf's feet, and under the clever fingers of the little smiths 2 crowns took shape. Not ugly, heavy things like modern European crowns, but light, delicate, beautifully shaped circles that you could really wear and look nicer by wearing. The king's was set with rubies and the queen's with emeralds. Nice crowns, huh? I guess you have emeralds on your nose. That green stuff is sort of like emeralds, right?
But what are they doing?
They're going to
I've
become the
seen
king and the
emerald.
queen. That's what they're going to do.
I know.
I've seen them.
Okay, when the crowns had been cooled in the river, Aslan made Frank and Helen kneel before him and placed the crowns on their head. When he said, "Rise up, King and Queen of Narnia, father and mother of many kings that shall be in Narnia and Isles of Archenland, be just and merciful and brave. The blessing is upon you." Then everyone cheered or bayed or neighed or trumpeted or clapped his wings, and the royal pair stood looking solemn and a little shy, but all the nobler for their shyness. And while Diggory was still cheering, he heard the deep voice of Aslan behind him saying, "Look!" Everyone in that crowd turned his head, and then everyone drew a long breath of wonder and delight. A little way off, towering over their heads, they saw a tree which had certainly not been there before. What do you think the tree is?
The witch?
No. Remember, who threw an apple?
Andrew.
Diggory threw an apple, and it landed in the mud, and it grew
Up into a tree.
a tree. That's right. All right, over their heads was an apple. It must have grown up silently as swiftly as a flag rises when you pull it up on a flagstaff, while they were all busied about the coronation. Its spreading branches seemed to cast a light rather than a shade, and silver apples peeped out like stars from under every leaf. It was the smell which came from it, even more than the sight, that had made everyone draw in their breath. For a moment, one could hardly think about anything else. "Son of Adam," said Aslan, "you have sown well." Sown means planted. "And you Narnians, let it be your first care to guard this tree, for it is your shield. The witch of whom I told you has fled away to the north of the world. She will live on there, growing stronger in dark magic, but while that tree flourishes, she will never come to Narnia. She dare not come within 100 miles of the tree, for its smell, which is joy and life and health to you, is death and horror and despair for her." Everyone was staring solemnly at the tree when Aslan suddenly swung around his head, scattering golden beams of light from his mane as he did so, and he fixed his large eyes on the children. "What is it, children?" he said, for he caught them in the very act of whispering and nudging one another. "Oh, Aslan, sir," said Diggory, turning red, "I forgot to tell you. The witch has already eaten one of those apples, one of the same kind that tree grew from." He hadn't really said all he was thinking, but Polly at once said for him. Diggory was always much more afraid than she of looking foolish. So he thought Aslan, and she said that there must be some mistake, and she can't really mind the smell of those apples. "Why do you think that, daughter of Eve?" asked the lion. "Well, she ate one." "Child," he replied, "that is why all the rest are now a horror to her. That is what happens to those who pluck and eat fruits at the wrong time, and in the wrong way. The fruit is good, but they loathe it ever after." "Oh, I see," said Polly, "and I suppose because she took it in the wrong way, it won't work for her. I mean, it won't make her always young and all that." "Alas," said Aslan, shaking his head, "it will. Things always work according to their nature. She has won her heart's desire. She is unwearying strength and endless days like a goddess, but length of days with an evil heart is only length of misery. And already she begins to know it. All get what they want. They do not always like it." Wow, there you go. There's a thought.
Are you done?
I nearly ate one myself, Aslan, said Diggory. Would I? You would, child, said Aslan, for the fruit always works. It must work, but it does not work happily for any who pluck it at their own will. If any Narnian unbidden had stolen an apple and planted it here, protecting Narnia, it would have protected Narnia, but it would have done so by making Narnia into another strong and cruel empire like Charn, not the kindly land I made it to be. And the witch tempted you to do another thing, my son, did she not? Yes, Aslan, she wanted me to take an apple home to Mother. Remember that? Because his mother's sick. He thought maybe that would help his mother, right? Understand then that it would have healed her, but not to your joy or hers. The day would have come when both you and she would have looked back and said it would have been better to die in that illness. And Diggory could say nothing, for tears choked him and gave up all hopes of saving his mother's life. But at the same time he knew that the lion knew what would have happened, and that there might be things more horrible even than losing someone to death. And now Aslan was speaking again, almost in a whisper. That is what would have happened, child, with the stolen apple, but not what will happen now. What I give you now will bring joy. It will not, in your world, give endless life, but it will heal. Go pluck her an apple from that tree. For a second, Diggory could hardly understand. It was as if the whole world had turned inside and upside down, and then, like someone in a dream, he was walking across to the tree, and King and Queen were cheering him, and all the creatures were cheering too. He plucked the apple, and he put it in his pocket, and then he came home, and he came back to Aslan. Please, he said, may we go home now? He had forgotten to say thank you, but he meant it, and Aslan understood. So what does he now have?
He has the apple.
He has an apple. What will that apple do?
So heal her mother, because Aslan said.
So it's going to cure his mother, huh?
But because Aslan said.
And it's also going to do some other things. Want me to give you a hint?
Like make her live forever.
Okay, so guess what?
Wait, is that
Should
over?
I tell you?
Is
Should I tell you in advance what's going
Is
to
it
happen?
over?
No, not this. That's just that chapter's over. There's one more chapter in this story, in this book, and then we got to start the second of the 7 books that are in this big book. So, do you want to know? You want me to tell you what's going to happen, or do you want me to make you wait? Tell you or make you wait? What's the
Tell.
Tell me.
Tell you? So
No.
the apple is
Make
going
it
to heal his mother. Okay, and then what's going to happen to the apple? They're going to plant the apple core in the garden, and it's going to grow a tree. And that tree, they're going to cut it down and use the wood to make a wardrobe. Remember the wardrobe that had the fur coats where they went in on the way to Narnia?
Oh, and also at war, it enters.
Remember? See, there you go.
Can
Okay,
I?
let me shut this off.
Okay.
Watch out, watch out.
Bye.
Move yourself so I can get through. We got to shut it off. Bye, everybody. All right.